Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. 3 days in a row. 3 days in a row, I took my morning walk around my new neighborhood, a kind of Rocky Mountain suburbia where tall meadow grass sprouts from the sloping yards of earth-toned homes. And he was walking up his driveway. 3 days in a row, just after 7 a.m., I left my cul-de-sac, perking my ears to make sure no car was coming around the blind curve, and walked onto the road along the ridge of the hill. Cool autumn air warming in the rising sun. Breathtaking view of snow-capped mountains in the distance. A skinny old guy with the perved mustache, walking his ugly little poodle on a leash. As always, dressed in puffy winter jacket, wool hat, jeans, and boots. He waved without a smile. Not some normal greeting, but insistently, almost wildly, like something was off about him. And though my hand felt like a 20-pound plate, I waved back. Mathematically, the chances of meeting him at the exact same spot, where the driveway from his modest ranch home met the street, 2 days in a row had to have been 1 in 1,000. But 3 days. More like 1 in a million, especially since a full 3 weeks after moving out of hot, noisy Denver, these were the first times I'd laid eyes on him. Irritated, I kept walking along the ridge and down the hill, turned around, and went back up. Sure enough, he stood in the shade of the ponderosa pines where my cul-de-sac connects to the road, as if waiting for me, his dog snuffling the grass. He waved again in that same frantic way. My stomach turned even though I hadn't eaten breakfast. You might be wondering what's the big deal about an elderly man walking his dog and saying hi to a neighbor. Why would I even notice such a thing, much less let it bother me? I'll tell you why. It was his vibe. A heaviness rising off him like heat from summer pavement that almost made me feel like puking. And no, I'm not that way with anyone else. I have no problem greeting the husky middle-aged jogger huffing by on his morning run. Happy to smile at the kids. Boy of maybe 11, girl of probably 9, waiting for the school bus. I even nod at the 20-something blonde in the red Jeep who speeds past me every weekend morning on her way back from who knows what late-night escapades. Yet this guy, I couldn't help but tense up when I was around, like he'd done me some wrong, and I was holding a grudge my conscious mind couldn't remember, though my body did, deep in my bones. Because I'm polite, I always waved back. Still, it took a ton of effort, and afterwards I felt rotten, like I'd thanked someone for spitting in my face. That Friday before I went to bed, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. No way he'd be up that early on a Saturday. Yet out in the cool dawn, dozen fawns nibbling the dewy grass. There he was again, walking up his damn driveway. I was so angry I crossed to the other side of the street. Still, I knew he saw me, the heaviness dropping on my shoulders like a wet coat. I walked slowly this time, hoping he'd be gone from my cul-de-sac by the time I got back. No such luck. My stalker stood in the same place he always did, at the junction of the road. Done with being nice, I marched past, ignoring his wave. And when I was most of the way to my house, turned around to give him the finger, he was already gone. What the hell did he want from me? If he hadn't been such a frail old bag of bones, I'd have been afraid for my safety. But since I could have probably killed him with one good punch to the head, It was nothing more than creepy, though plenty at that. The next morning, Sunday, I waited until after breakfast to take my walk. I wasn't even surprised when he was there again, pacing up his fucking driveway like it was the most normal thing in the world. I can't even articulate how much I hated this man. I was so mad, I didn't even nod at Blondie as she whizzed by in her Jeep. Grinding my teeth, clenching my fists, I hurried back to the cul-de-sac, wanting only to get inside and lock my doors. I shook my head at the maniac as I went past. He didn't react, just kept waving. On Monday, I skipped my morning walk and only headed out when I got home from work. He was there at the top of his driveway, of course. Always there. I turned around and went straight home to call the cops. Breathlessly, I told them a crazy man was following me around my neighborhood. After a few minutes of trying to explain the gravity of the situation, and them reminding me that excessive friendliness wasn't a crime, I accepted they wouldn't be any help. I hung up Tuesday and Wednesday. I didn't go for a walk at all, just off to work at my usual time. On Thursday, I ventured out a couple of hours after sundown, the night brisk and quiet. My heart pounded by the time I got to his driveway, except, wonder of wonder, he wasn't there. Then my guts turned to cement at the scuffle of footsteps, the patter of little paws. Red hot with rage, I was done. Absolutely done. "Hey, asshole." Not having to see his wrinkled face made it easier to confront him. The footsteps stopped, but he didn't say anything. I could barely make out his figure, a dark stain in the night, like an ink spill on a black page. "Why are ya following me?" No response. "Well, I'm on to you." I spat, voice shaking with anger. Or was it fear? "And if I catch you anywhere near me again, I'm gonna beat the living crap out of you." I stalked off into the night, pulse pounding in victory. One thing for sure, I got my point across. No way he'd still be out when I got back. I turned around at the bottom of the hill and trekked up again, half hoping he was waiting for me so I could keep my promise. I imagined myself sweeping out his spidery legs and kicking him in the spine, or shoving him hard in the chest so he fell on his bony butt, or even just rearing back and decking him. While it's true that, outside of grade school scuffles, I've never hit anyone, this time I knew I'd deliver, and damn the consequences. On first glance, the cul-de-sac looked empty, but it was pitch black out, so I couldn't be sure. I strode along, and indeed no one at the junction. I felt something inside of me that had been tight for weeks finally unspool. Next morning, up and at 'em at my usual time. Though raring for a fight, verbal, physical, both. I had a feeling the old guy wouldn't be there, and I was right. No sign of him on his driveway. I even waited a minute to be sure, but the door to his squat little house stayed shut. For the first time in weeks, I enjoyed my walk. Fresh air in my lungs, mountains glowing in the rising sun. Quiet, the whole reason I moved up from the crowded, stinking city. Happily, my luck held the next morning, too, and the next. For a full blissful week, I saw neither hide nor hair of the weirdo and his scrawny dog. Now Sunday morning, the old man's still MIA, I start to feel a tiny bit bad. With the break I've had, I'd be okay seeing him once in a while. It was just the everyday thing that bugged me. As I stroll along the ridge road, blood singing in my veins, sky pastel blue, I wonder if maybe I was overreacting. After all, dogs need to go out at least a few times a day. So of course, the guy would be out there first thing in the morning when everyone gets up, and again, in the afternoon and evening, which happened to be the other times I took my walks. By the time I get to the bottom of the hill, it dawns on me that these strolls with his dog might be the only way the old codger breaks up his day. I don't think he's married or works, so he probably looks forward to his little trips around the neighborhood as much as I do. And what if the reason he kept bumping into me is because he's lonely and wants to talk but is too shy to say something? What if he's not the monster here, and I am? On my way back, I hope I'll catch him in the cul-de-sac so I can apologize, strike up a little conversation, get to know him a bit. A few minutes out of my morning won't kill me. He's not there, and my heart sinks. Still, it's not too late to fix this. Whistling a happy tune, I amble down his driveway and knock on the front door. I'm jolted by a deep, loud barking from inside. No way that tiny poodle is making these sounds. Before I can worry if I've got the right place, a clean-shaven 30-something man in collared shirt and slacks answers the door. Behind him, a brunette in blouse and skirt holds a snarling boxer by its collar. "Sorry to bother you," I say tentatively, and a bit confused. "Is that older fellow around? Your dad, maybe?" He squints. "My folks live in Phoenix." "Oh, hers, maybe." I nod towards the woman, who struggles to keep the growling dog from charging. The man shakes his head, and I catch a whiff of his piney cologne. "They're in Denver. What's this about?" I figure they're just being protective. In my kindest voice, I ask, "Who's the elderly man who lives with you?" He gives me a blank look. I dry swallow, nervous for some reason. "With the poodle? Sounds like you got the wrong address." He shrugs. "Sorry, we're getting ready for work." My armpits drip and I'm jittery, as if I've had too much coffee. Surely, I haven't been hallucinating. Before he can close the door, I blurt out, "You're saying an old man with a black poodle doesn't live here?" Before he can respond, the woman who's finally calmed the boxer to a low whine chimes up, "You mean the guy who used to own the place?" "Used to?" My tense shoulders relax. At least I'm not seeing things. "When was that?" "We've been here almost 3 years," she says. The realtor mentioned him. Guy in his late 70s. That's him. I sigh with relief, certain I've figured it out. He's still in the neighborhood. I think he's got dementia and keeps forgetting he doesn't live here anymore. The woman furrows her brow and shakes her head. The boxer is finally quiet. "He didn't move. He died." "No." Dizzy, I stagger back a step. "You can look it up online." She nods. "Winter of 2019, I think. Someone speeding past a stopped school bus almost ran over a couple of kids. At the last second, the guy pushed them out of the way. Got creamed himself. Poor little doggy, too." The sky spins, and I rub my eyes until I see stars. That's when the boxer breaks free and bolts towards the door. The man slams it in my face just in time. In a daze, I stumble up the driveway, tripping over my own feet. A ghost. I've seen a freaking ghost. I threatened to beat up a ghost. No wonder the heavy vibes coming from the old guy. He's dead. Then a chill down my back, and maybe out for revenge. Nauseous, I pace along, staring down at the cracked pavement. If ghosts are real, does that mean there's an afterlife? A cartoonish image comes to mind of my grandparents, dressed in white, floating on a cloud. Does everyone become a ghost? Or is it like the books and movies where they have unfinished business? How many are out there? Have I seen others before and not known it? Can everyone see them, or just some of us? And what about the poodle? Dogs can be ghosts too. Can all animals? Brain boiling like a tea kettle, I reach the top of the hill. Why is this guy haunting me, of all people? It's not like we have any history. Before last month, I hadn't even set foot in the neighborhood. I'm so caught up by the whirlwind of thoughts, I don't notice I'm in the middle of the street. Not until the red Jeep roars around the blind curve, headed straight for me. Story number 2. Roughly 2 years ago, my family and I moved from the city to the suburbs. and we slowly became accustomed to the change in our daily lifestyle. Rather than walking everywhere, we relied on cars to take us even to the nearest convenience store. Instead of spending the day window shopping or sitting in a cafe finishing some work, we stayed enclosed in our house. The commute to work went from 45 minutes to almost 2 hours, which was troublesome at times, given the country's lack of funding to infrastructure and public transportation. I never really found a reason to have a car, but now that we live somewhere where there are more cars on the streets than people, needless to say, it was a large adjustment for everyone. And to be honest, I do not see myself adjusting ever. I hated the quiet, the lack of activities, and just staying home all day. Not even 3 months after we moved in, my stepfather's aunt suddenly came to stay with us. She had recently immigrated from our motherland and was staying with her brother who lives in another state. While being quiet is not really a bad thing, she was too eerie from the beginning, always lurking, and when you catch her eyes, she flashes a large, toothless grin that does not disappear until you look away. Always. I never understood why she did not want to stay with her brother. While a big frugal, his kind demeanor and happy-go-lucky attitude always made you feel at home. It wasn't until a few days later when a huge fight broke out, and it caused a rift between my mother and stepfather. This argument waxed and waned, sometimes a few taunts here and there, sometimes full-blown yelling match, and before I knew it, months had passed. My stepfather's parents, who also stayed with us, took the aunt and moved into the basement. There were already rooms there from the previous owner, and we added a kitchen during the renovation in the odd chance we might have to rent it out. The fighting slowly subdued around and ended like all other previous fights. Heavy words and unproven accusations were thrown, which were later forgotten to time. No apologies or discussions or any sort of discourse. But I remember them, and I am still waiting for some sort of resolution to them. But as days pass, I highly doubt there will be closure in my lifetime. After several months, my stepfather wanted to bring another person into the house, a stranger that recently widowed, who did not want to stay with her daughter over an argument. I did not pay too much attention to the reason, but it was something along the lines of property that was in the will. My mother adamantly against this. Not only is this woman a stranger, but we have never heard of her until a few months ago. However, when you live in a patriarchal household, I already know what was going to happen. My stepfather was going to get his way, and after a few weeks he brought her into the house, set her up in another room in the basement, where the grandparents and aunt were. At first she would rarely speak, but was always pleasant. But after a couple months, she slowly became judgmental and demanding, always giving her opinion on a topic when no one was talking to her or questioning certain aspects of our lives. Nothing to me personally, since I do not speak to her nor give her an opportunity. But a few times we did butt heads, and I would always tell her she is out of line, making demands of me in random moments, and like all arguments, it would go into the abyss of avoidance. This past winter, my biological grandmother came to stay with us. She has a house back home, and usually is fine. However, she had a recent fall, and my aunts and uncles wanted to make sure she was all right, so they brought her over. Because everyone has work, naturally it fell onto my mom, who was mostly at home. Growing up with her, I quickly realized that my mother did not have nurturing qualities of a caretaker. So, my grandmother coming in definitely put a strain on her, the already present anxiety doubling this and making it unbearable at times. She couldn't leave the house since my grandmother needed constant care, so she slowly started to spend time downstairs. A floor of concrete, giving her a moment of solace when it got too much for her. At first it was once every few days, then once a day. Currently, multiple times a day. Every time we would question where my mom could be, it was a 99.9% chance she was downstairs. This incident during dinner always kept playing in my mind. But normally I ate dinner around 6 to 7 p.m. My mother eats it much later, around 10 p.m., shortly before going to bed. My grandmother was watching her nightly TV news broadcast, so it was just my mom eating by herself. I did not have work the next day, so I wanted to just with her and keep her company while she eats. She was eating, so I did not expect her to respond often, but I noticed she kept her eyes glued to her phone. Remembering how she would berate my siblings for watching and eating, I jokingly told her how the tables have turned. She never laughed at my jokes before, so it did not surprise me that she ignored me and focused on her phone. Then she shoots up from her seat, tells me she wants to get another serving for herself, and goes to the stove to do just that. The kitchen is right next to the basement, so she can easily have a conversation from upstairs. I hear her ask what they made for dinner, since they also eat around the same time. I did not hear a response. However, she started to make her way downstairs, even before she finished her sentence, leaving me there on the dining room table. And then I realized that her plate was not even halfway empty when she went to the stove. This happened a few more times. Thinking she wanted her own space or not my company, I did not really linger around her and just stayed in my room. I was also studying for my graduate school entrance exam, so I rather used my time to focus on studying, since my exam was coming up in a few weeks. Late June. Time passed far too quickly, and the fear of taking such an important exam would, of course, fill me with anxiety. Recalling back, I think I spoke to my mother only a handful of times. Taking care of my grandmother took its toll on her, and she often would verbally explode on the next person. Most of the time it would be me, since I would be home studying. I just tried to avoid her the entire day. Call me superstitious, but I do not want any negative energy so close to my exam. On the day of the exam, I quietly left my house early in the morning, since commuting into the city took me a while, and I wanted to get there early to calm my nerves. After sitting still for 6 hours and another 2-hour commute home, I came home to my grandmother sitting by herself, just looking out the window. In our culture, after any big event, we usually prepare sweets, or the person's favorite dish. But I came home to an empty stove, and where was my mother? Downstairs. I heard her come back after a few hours, and nothing. She did not ask how my exam was, nor how I was feeling, or what I wanted to eat. The stove was empty. The house was quiet and empty afterwards. I think it was mid-July, when our series of arguments started. It would not start with me, but somehow I would get roped into it, and it would slowly descend into days of me going non-verbal. While I am aware it can be seen as immature and toxic, but going non-verbal helps me keep my peace of mind. Whenever I would try to reason with her, I would be met ignorant silence or screaming, and no one would take my side, so I would just keep to myself. After every argument, she would go downstairs and, of course, vent about how I am the worst child imaginable. Now we are approaching the end of September. My exam score came back late August. She never bothered to follow up, nor ask. Since mid-July, we would have arguments every 1 to 2 weeks, the most recent being the day before I am writing this post. Then the next day, she would ask me to do something for them. No apologies, no resolution, nothing. To be clear, it is a pattern. It seems that everything I do bothers her. Not only does she get mad at the smallest things, but her stubbornness on equally insignificant actions just doubled. She keeps going downstairs per usual. Not more nor less, but always and like clockwork. Even if they are sleeping downstairs, my mother would just go downstairs and wait by their door for a few moments to see if they wake up. I am not saying they are doing some evil magic on her, but I have known from my stepfather's family to dabble in things like that. Oftentimes I have come across strange amulets and pieces of hair, each different from the other. The constant whispers that stop when someone is nearby, the stares, toothless grins, the strangers, new house, new environment, and new lifestyle. Something is wrong, and something is happening. I can't prove it, nor can I solve it, but I can recognize patterns, positive correlations, and biased results. I think my family is cursed. Story number 3. Slamming into each other head-on, the two red semi-trucks then backed up and slammed into each other again at top speed. They went vroom, vroom. Neither truck had taken any damage. There wasn't even any paint transfer. "Truck, red truck," the voice demanded. Dad grimly stood, took one of the toys from Michael before he could react, and without ceremony, tossed it into the corner of the living room. There was nothing there, and then for an instant, we could all see the mouth. Its lips were glistening, its teeth perfectly white and straight, and the tongue was pink with a gray carpet upon it, and curled around the toy while it took it. As it began to masticate the plastic and the imagination of the child, we could hear the crunching. Then there was silence. Then Michael began to cry, still holding the other red truck toy. Mom picked him up and took him to his room. All I could think about was how many things we had fed to the mouth. I thought about when I had first seen it, and it was like it was always a part of our lives. It was always there, consuming whatever made us happy, taking away any comfort. It was always demanding something, and as long as it was appeased, we didn't have to fear it. The fear was still there, just a kind of background, a kind of silent terror of what it might do to us if we didn't immediately give it what it wanted. I couldn't remember what life was like in our family before the mouth began to speak. I can't remember a time when we didn't live oppressed by its invisible presence, avoiding that blank corner of the room. "Why don't we just move away?" Mom had asked Dad, quietly one night after the mouth had eaten both of their wedding rings. "Shh, don't say that. You'll make it angry." Dad trembled, worried that the mouth might have overheard what his wife had suggested. There could be no escape. Even if we all jumped in the car and drove away without packing, without planning, the mouth would somehow catch us. That seemed to be what Dad was afraid of. It could do things, make us forget things. Not little things, but big things. I suppose we could drive away, but how far would we get before we realized the mouth had made us forget to bring Michael with us? We would drive back for him, of course, but would it be too late? The thought was too terrifying to contemplate. We couldn't get help from outside. Nobody believed any of us. Our family had become isolated and imprisoned by the mouth. I wondered where it had come from, or if there were others like it. Perhaps someone had figured out a way to get rid of a mouth in the corner of their room. I could hear my parents. They were in their room and they were whispering and crying, and they sounded completely terrified and broken. They were succumbing to its tyranny and its power to turn the truth into lies, to do evil to our family day in and day out, and nobody would believe it. To the rest of the world, our whole family was crazy, and there was no mouth. I closed my eyes and fell asleep, taken by exhaustion. There was no other way to fall asleep, knowing that thing is in the same house. I just have to wait until I cannot keep my eyes open, and then I am overwhelmed by sleepiness and I get some rest. I always awake to crying and disturbing noises, knowing sleep only brings helplessness against such a thing, and that I will awake to another nightmare makes voluntarily closing my eyes for rest impossible. There is no sleep for the oppressed and the haunted. When something waits downstairs to feed on you, and nobody believes you, that is when you lose yourself. Sometimes I just can't fight it, and I feel like I'd give it anything. That's how my parents are now. They just blindly obey that horror. I think that is the scariest part of all, that my parents have given in to such evil, and now they blindly obey it. I am worried the voice will speak and it will say, Michael, or it will say my name, perhaps. Would my parents finally snap out of it? I don't think so. They've given over control to the mouth. They listen to it, and they do as it commands, without question. It's better to give it what it wants. If it must come and take it, then it is so much worse. There's no escape. Dad had said once in a moment of lucidity. That morning when I was sitting on the stairs, I looked at the dog bowls by the front door. I trembled as I realized I had no memory of our family owning a dog. I got up and went into the backyard, where I spotted some old dog poop in the grass and a chewed-up dog toy. I wondered how long ago our dog had gone missing. How long does it take to forget a pet? This worried me. My mind gradually began to form the disturbing thought that the mouth had eaten our dog. Worse, if we had forgotten the dog, that meant we had cooperated. That meant that Dad had fed our dog to the mouth. The thought of him doing that had terrified me, because I could already imagine my father sacrificing one of us to feed the mouth. Dad is a very cowardly man, who is only brave when he is yelling at his children. He doesn't yell at his wife. He's afraid of her. In my mind, he is just as cruel as the mouth. Everything it eats, he feeds to it. I don't believe my dad would ever do anything to protect anyone except himself, because that's all I've ever seen him do. He thinks he is making sacrifices, but if his own children are just snacks for his precious mouth, he is only sacrificing to save himself. I suddenly realized all of this about my father while staring at a red toy truck on the floor by the front door. Somehow, the toy filled me with dread, and I had no idea why. Mom said it was a day we could go out because we had prior appointments. The whole family had the same dentist, and we all had our cleaning on the same day. The three of us got into the car, and I noted they'd never gotten rid of my old booster seat. I couldn't even remember how long it was in the car for. I hadn't needed a booster seat for years. Dad had a grim but relieved look on his face, like he'd gotten rid of something awful, or dodged a bullet. I wondered if he had fed the mouth, as it was the only time any of us got any relief. After it had fed, it would be quiet for a day or two after it was fed. "Ah, the Liesels, my favorite family. Where's the little one?" Dr. Bra asked. "She's right here, growing so fast." Mom smiled a fake smile and shoved me forward gently. Dr. Bria looked at her and then at me with a very strange and concerned look, but said nothing else. Her warm and welcoming demeanor switched to a creeped-out but professional one. While we were getting our cleaning, I looked around at all the tooth, dental hygiene, and oral-themed decorations. It occurred to me that Dr. Bria might be my last hope. I asked her, with nervous tears in my eyes, "Dr. Bria, can I ask you something?" And I guess the look on my face, the encounter in the lobby, and the conspiratorial and desperate way I was whispering triggered her protective instincts. She knew something was wrong, and she was no coward. She stood and closed the door to the examination room, and then leaned in close and nodded. I could see that she was listening to me, and she wasn't going to judge me. "What is it, sweetie?" Dr. Bria's voice reassured me I was safe to ask her for advice. "How do you kill a mouth?" I asked. She flinched because she had no idea what I was saying, but then she nodded, like she was internalizing something, and then she said, "Let it dry out. That's the fastest way to ruin a good mouth." Dr. Bria instructed me. She was taking me seriously, I couldn't believe it. "What if it is a bad mouth, an evil mouth?" I asked. Her face contorted, like she wasn't sure if she should laugh, and was again internalizing complicated thoughts. She responded in a confidential tone, treating my worries with seriousness. "I clean bad mouths. If it's bad enough, I run a drill and other measures. The teeth, the gums, even the throat can develop infections." Dr. Bria explained. Then something occurred to her. "I've never dealt with an evil mouth before. For that, to kill one, I'd pull the teeth." "Pull the teeth?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes, love. If you pull the teeth, the mouth has no power. Teeth are the source of all the power a mouth has. That's why we take such good care of our teeth." Dr. Bria smiled for me, a kind and motherly smile. She thought she had resolved my fears, and in a way she had. I was starting to think that there might be a way to save my family, a way to defeat the mouth. "How would I pull the teeth if the mouth is very big?" I asked. "Maybe just smash them out with a big hammer." Dr. Bria chuckled. "If you hit them out, it's the same thing, and it will hurt the evil mouth even more. What if the mouth cannot be approached? It is invisible, and it instantly eats whatever enters. A hammer or anything?" I asked. Dr. Bria looked quizzical but indulgent. "What are we talking about?" she finally asked. "Nothing." I realized I had already said too much. I was just wondering. Such an imaginative child. Dr. Bria smiled and let me out of the chair and opened the door and led me out to the lobby where my parents were waiting. She asked them, "Will you need another appointment for Michael?" "Who?" Mom asked. Dad had a strange, almost guilty look in his eyes, but he shrugged it off and nudged her. "Nothing, we don't need anything." And he got up and took me and Mom out to the car without saying goodbye. Dr. Bria wasn't finished. She ran out after us, demanding answers, letting her professional demeanor fall away. She suddenly didn't care about polite conventions of everyday life that restrain people from doing the good that their instincts command. She ran after us as we left the parking lot, frustration in her eyes and something else. Back at home, I kept thinking about Dr. Bria and the way she had reacted. She cared about me, cared that something was very wrong. Later that afternoon, she arrived at our house, quite unprofessional and unsure what she was doing. She'd felt triggered to act, and she couldn't back down, knowing instinctively that something was dreadfully wrong with our family. I saw her creeping around outside, trying to peer through the windows, which were all drawn shut. I opened the front door for her and let her inside. Dad was in his room, hiding. That's where he spent the day sometimes. "Let me show you the mouth," I said quietly and nervously. I was afraid it might overpower her, or she wouldn't be able to see it. But it turns out the mouth stood no chance against Dr. Bria. I was shaking with fear as she neared the mouth. "Wait, careful." I tugged her sleeve, my eyes wide with anxiety, staring at the visible mouth where it yawned in a kind of creepy smile. Dr. Bria kept inching towards it. Bottle of clear liquid," the mouth demanded. "Sure thing." Dr. Bria was holding something. She tossed a small vial of clear liquid into the mouth and stepped back while it crunched the glass in its molars. It soon began to snore. Dr. Bria started inching towards it again, and from her fanny pack, she produced a surgical scalpel with a clear green handle. She pushed its blade out, and it clicked in place. In her hand, the tiny blade somehow looked formidable. "It's asleep," she sighed, relieved. "How did you know?" I asked. "I listened to you. That's all it took." Dr. Bria said, "I knew something was wrong, and it was mouth-related, so I brought a few things." "Now what?" I asked, worried it might wake up angry and demand a horrifying sacrifice. "We need a sledgehammer. I'm gonna knock its teeth out." Dr. Bria sounded brave. "You'll do no such thing." Dad was blocking the entrance to the living room. "Doctor." "Female dentist." The mouth spoke with a groggy voice, already resisting the drugs and starting to wake. "No problem." Dad rushed forward and tried to shove her into the mouth, but Dr. Bria neatly stepped aside, a movement rehearsed 1,000 times, tripped him and tossed him headfirst into the mouth, and she barely moved or touched him. The mouth chomped down on Dad and bit off the upper half, chewing violently as his muffled screams gave way to crunching and gulping as it ate. The tongue flicked out and drew in his quivering lower half and ate that part too, until there was nothing but a puddle of blood where he had fallen. Dr. Bria looked at me and held me, saying, "Don't look, it's okay. I'm sorry." "It's fine," I said blankly, as I stared without feeling anything while the mouth ate Dad. I was more curious about how she had done what she did, so I asked, "How'd you do that?" "I'm an orange belt in judo. It was just reflexes." "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked me. "Totally fine. I'm not sure what I'm going to do without you. I don't feel safe with that thing there," I said, hearing the strangeness in my response, but I was unsure why. "You just saw your dad get eaten, didn't you?" Dr. Bria was worried about something I wasn't. I hadn't seen any such thing, and I had no idea who she was talking about. "Aren't we going to smash its teeth?" I asked. "We can try," she said. She got on her phone while the mouth was saying, "Smartphone, handheld telephone." Dr. Bria wasn't fully under its power, yet, even though she had fed it. She looked at her phone and almost fed it to the thing, the mouth's influence growing stronger. But I said, "Don't feed it." And she heard me and snapped out of it. "We're gonna need some muscle. I called for help," she said. We went outside and waited. Soon a man in a pickup showed up. "I brought the jackhammer, babe. Where's the fire?" he said, grinning at Dr. Bria. She let him into my house, and I heard him swearing and cussing, and then laughing as he fired up the jackhammer in our living room. The noise from the jackhammer was unbelievably loud, but the mouth was huge and in trouble, screaming while the man was at work. The mouth sounded very anguished and enraged, but soon its words were muffled, like it was a chubby bunny with marshmallows in its cheeks. When things went quiet, they went very quiet. And then the man was laughing. I laughed too, the instant the spell was broken. The man came out holding one of the enormous teeth. In the light of day, it crumbled into what looked like broken drywall. He looked disappointed that he had no proof of what he had just seen and done. "It's gone," I said. I knew it was. I wondered where I would go, having no immediate recollection of my family. "Where's your mother and your brother?" Dr. Bria asked me. I had no idea who she was talking about. She took me with her and I stayed with her. Social workers came. Police were involved. My family was declared missing, and eventually, after 3 years, I was officially adopted by Dr. Bria and her husband, Walter, whom you met earlier with his jackhammer. I've grown to love them, and they are very good to me. Over time, I remembered all of this, but only when I was ready. As I felt more safe and secure and happy, it was safe to recall my past. Now I know how I came to be, who I am, where I am. I am home with them, and they know all about me. They will never think I am crazy or making things up for attention. They are my family. I can't wait until I can become a dentist. You've reached the end, but the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.